So Florida's immigration crackdown has led to a lot of jobs remaining open, and Florida is hoping to replace those workers with children.
Critics say this is giving big businesses a free pass to exploit young workers, supporters, and guys, they calling this an opportunity. But let's be real, we don't want no 14-year-old trading homework for 40 hours a week. Who wants to do that? Who want their child doing that? This isn't 1925. What is
you Magas would rather have a child working overnight than have an illegal immigrant doing that job.
Because you lazy fucking racist white pieces of it that have been screaming for decades that immigrants are coming to take your jobs, that they are taking your jobs, that they are leaving you jobless. Now that the jobs are available because the immigrants have been deported, you don't want the jobs. And the only logical thing you underdeveloped brain Neanderthals can think to do is put children to work. So black people are no longer slaves, so they're not there to do the work. The immigrants that you hate so much but love to use for underpaid labor are being deported, so they're not there doing the work. And instead of getting off your lazy white racist asses, your first thought was, let's put our kids to work.
These people, they really don't care about your kids.
Nobody had the who enough in the brain to like think beyond like, okay, after we deport all these people, who's going to work the jobs that they were working? Because I don't know. I don't know how true this is, but like they're saying like immigrants were paying a good amount of fucking money in taxes, and now there's so many jobs that need to be filled and available. And I mean, I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, there's a lot of people that don't want to work the jobs that they were working. So now they're kind of like, yo, let's have these 16, these 17, 15-year-old kids come and work.
Which families do you think are going to be forced to go work at the age of 14?
So Florida deported a lot of immigrant workers, right? Now businesses are struggling because they don't have enough workers. Instead of fixing the real problem, they're now turning to children. Yeah, you heard me right. They are turning to kids. Let's be real. Deporting immigrant workers without a backup plan was a massive mistake. These were people who did jobs that kept industries running. Now, instead of coming up with a proper solution, they want children to step in. Think about that. Why not offer better wages and conditions for adults who are already struggling to find decent jobs? Why is the solution always about exploiting the vulnerable?
Kick out immigrants and they need people to fill the jobs suddenly. Oops. And where are they looking? Children. Why? This is not, this person's saying, what stage of capitalism is this? This is the first stage. This is how it is. I'm going to take you back a little bit and explain the thing. This is just basic leverage, though. Black Death, a bunch of people die. Suddenly the fields are kind of empty. There's no one to work them. And so the landlords are desperate and they don't have a lot of leverage. Like, someone's got to work in these fields. And the peasants like, okay, well, you want me to work? Pay me better then. And they start getting paid better. The 1500s are like a golden age for labor. But then what happens? Well, they push back. They do the enclosures and kick like hundreds of thousands of people off the land, and suddenly those hundreds of thousands of people need jobs if they want to survive. That's a law. If people are unemployed, you can legally enslave them. Just start making laws, bringing in immigrants from other parts of the world, especially people that you can where there's like a high cost if they were to push back against bad labor conditions. So this is kind of the way that it works. So you see bringing in more immigrants for labor, loosening child labor laws. Historically, women have been in this bucket as well because they get paid less. So getting more women into the workforce is a way to drum up more labor. You're sort of diluting the labor pool. If there's more people, then some people have to be unemployed. Students, especially international students, young people who don't really know their rights or how to advocate for themselves, and people from other parts of the world. So if they were to fight back, they can be deported. So it's like a higher barrier, and they don't do it. This is just basic leverage for capitalism. This is very much how the whole thing works. This is why there's always unemployed people, and there need to be unemployed people. George Carlin was right. The homeless people are there to scare the shit out of the middle class people. That's kind of the deal.
You know how I describe the economic and social classes in this country? The upper class keeps all of the money, pays none of the taxes. The middle class pays all of the taxes, does all of the work. The poor are there just to scare the shit out of the middle class. Keep them showing up at those jobs.
You got rid of undocumented immigrants, and now you can't find bodies to do these jobs. So your thought was, how about we make the workforce younger? We allow people as young as 14 years old to be able to work overnight. They don't... School? Who cares about school? They're making me money. Those kids don't need to get rest. They stay up all night playing video games anyway. They might as well work. Instead of the adults who just happen to be in the country illegally. Instead of getting those adults the proper citizenship, that way they can continue to do the work, we're just going to get rid of them and then make children do it. So we can groom them and they can become the type of people we want them to be. Right. Somebody come tell my 14-year-old that they got to work overnight on a Tuesday. You would never see it again.
My biggest question is, what about school? You want kids to go to work. What about school? Education is supposed to be a priority for young people. But if a 14-year-old is working at night, when do they study? When do they sleep? This law is basically telling kids, forget about your education, go and make money for these companies. This isn't just about missing a few hours of schoolwork. Lack of sleep affects brain development, concentration, and overall health. How do they expect a child to focus on exam when they're exhausted from working shifts meant for adults? It makes no sense. This is setting kids up for failure, keeping them in a cycle of poverty instead of giving them the chance to build a better future. And let's not forget about homework and extracurricular activities. Kids should be learning, participating in sports, or engaging in hobbies that develop their skills. But instead, they'll be exhausted from work. How does that help them long term?
Unfortunately, it doesn't just stop there, because they're advancing another bill that would make it to where they don't have to pay these children minimum wage for working their overnight shift on a school night. Oh, but wait, there's more. This bill would also eliminate the 30-minute meal breaks that these children are legally required to take after working 8 hours. Let's just talk about that for a minute. Florida only has around 53 workers for every 100 available jobs. So instead of accepting the labor and tax money from undocumented migrants, the Republicans think it's a better idea to have 14-year-olds working overnight shifts on school nights for less than minimum wage. That's genuinely fucking insane.
It does not make sense for teenagers to be working overnight shifts, especially on school days, since they're basically not going to be able to learn. But honestly, to no surprise, it's no surprise that they are basically trying to gut as much education, so basically kids would have to do these jobs. And for those that actually didn't read this was actually detailed in Project 2025. Notice how a lot of the things in Project 2025 are coming into fruition. And it basically looks like they're going the route of the state of Arkansas, in which Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders basically eased child labor laws over there and basically removed hazard protections for kids that work those type of jobs. If you think about it, comedian George Carlin was basically right. It's like they only care about you when you're in the womb, but once you're out, you're on your own. Because these people are also getting school lunches and they're also getting SNAP benefits. And they're basically trying to gut anything that helps the American citizens. We are in dark times indeed.
Let's also think about parents here. Many parents work multiple jobs just to make ends meet. Now their children are being pushed into the workforce too. Parents shouldn't have to rely on their kids working to survive. That's a government failure. Families should be supported so that children can focus on growing, learning, and becoming responsible adults. But instead, lawmakers are telling them, hey, if you're struggling, send your kid to work. That's not a solution, that's exploitation. What happens when parents have no choice but to send their kids to work? What about single parents who now feel pressure to have their children contribute financially? The government should be creating policies that lift people out of poverty, not ones that encourage child labor. Why did they deport immigrant workers if they had no replacement plan? They got rid of working adults and now they want to use kids to fill those jobs? This is exploitation, plain and simple. If they need workers, they should create fair policies for adults to work instead of risking children's futures. Let's connect the dots. First, immigrants were targeted and forced out. Then businesses started struggling without their labor. Now, instead of admitting they made a mistake, they want to use key to fill the gaps. It's like they're saying, we don't want immigrants and we don't want to pay fair wages to adults, so let's just use cheap child labor instead. If this doesn't tell you everything you need to know about how little they care, I don't know what to tell you. And who's really benefiting from this? Not the children, not their families, it's the corporations. Big businesses that don't want to pay adults decent wages but are happy to exploit minors. They will pocket the profits while these kids suffer. It's beyond shameful. Now, what happens when these kids grow up? If they start working full-time at 14, they are less likely to finish school. That means fewer opportunities, lower wages, and a hard life in the long run. This law isn't just about letting kids work, it's about keeping them in a cycle of poverty. And let's be honest, once businesses realize they can get away with using child labor, do you really think they will stop? What if next they lower the working age even more? What if 12-year-olds are next? When does it stop? If we don't stand up and speak out now, this will just keep getting worse. Look at developed countries that value education. Countries like Finland, Sweden, and Canada, they invest in their youth. They don't send them to work at night. They ensure they have the best educational opportunities possible. Meanwhile, Florida is making laws that resemble third world labor exploitation. What does that say about priorities? And let's compare this to developing countries where child labor is common. In places where kids work from a young age, they often remain trapped in poverty with no real way out. Is that what Florida wants? To make one of the richest states in the US and make it resemble a struggling nation with poor labor policies? People are angry, and they should be. This law is getting massive backlash from parents, teachers, and labor activists. No one wants to see kids lose their childhood to work shifts. Social media is exploding with criticism, and many are calling for action. Lawmakers should be addressing wage gaps, providing better labor conditions, and ensuring workers are treated fairly. Instead, they are cutting corners by targeting children. Well, these are my thoughts. This law doesn't just affect kids, it affects families, education, and the entire system. It's a disgrace that lawmakers would even consider this as a solution. We should be investing in education, making sure families have financial support, and creating fair working conditions for adults, not pushing kids into the workforce to fix a problem that politicians created in the first place. So guys, what do you think about this? Should kids be working instead of going to school? Should the government be forcing children into jobs instead of helping struggling families? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and also remember to subscribe, like, and share as well. And until next time, bye-bye.